New Africa is rising. It can guarantee the most youthful middle populace on the planet, sitting at around 20 years of age versus different landmasses, which sit at more than 30. It is the second biggest landmass on the planet, and was home to the most extravagant man to have at any point resided. The tallest, quickest, and generally speaking greatest land creatures are from this delightful mainland. Frequently disregarded ever, Africa, the home of north of 3,000 ethnic gatherings and more than 2,000 dialects, merits over 10 minutes. So we ask you to involve this video as a venturing stone to further developed themes. Fossils flung about the African scene advise specialists all they need to be aware. We can utilize these to follow back our human genealogy to a while back. Our own species, Homo sapiens, would start to arise only a long time back and would embrace a movement known as the Out of Africa relocation close to a long time back, sending people all over the globe. The Sahara, when lavish and green, would encounter a drying period starting in 5000 BCE and expanding because of a change in the world's pivot around 3500 BCE, at last turning into a desert. This made early people pass on the Sahara and move to the Nile Valley. Before agribusiness, the tracker finders would start to tame dairy cattle, the jackass, and goats. The locale would ultimately become Egypt, and is one of only a handful of exceptional regions of the world to have freely fostered a composing framework. With their most memorable pharaoh taking power around 3100 BCE, Egypt would become quite possibly of the longest enduring human advancement. They would tumble to the Achaemenid realm under the Persians. However, soon in 322 BCE, Alexander the Incomparable, welcomed as a savior, would overcome Egypt as well as the whole Persian domain. Egypt would go on under the Greek Ptolemaic line following Alexander's passing. During this time, one more North African power would come to noticeable quality. The Carthaginians, situated in Carthage, established by pilgrims from Phoenicia, who might come to be known as Punics. These Mediterranean ocean brokers would equal Rome, and that would be the reason for their definitive death, with Rome absolutely obliterating the North African progress. Afterward, with the Roman domain, that locale would be named the region of Africa Proconsularis. Septimius Severus, who was half Punic himself, turned into the primary Roman head of African plummet. The 1st century CE was set apart by the spread of Christianity in Africa, in the areas nearest to Judea like Egypt, Nubia, and the Aksumite domain. During the 600s, however, Islam would move throughout North Africa. The Berbers living west of Egypt would switch over completely to the new confidence, and it would start to spread southwards through shipping lanes. In West Africa, we accept the Mandi-talking people groups to have found agribusiness autonomously and made various metropolitan habitats like Dar Tichit and Walata. A piece toward the east, Gene Gino was settled around 300 BCE and developed to be perhaps of the main metropolitan place in sub-Saharan Africa. Around present-day Nigeria, in 1500 BCE, the Nok culture would flourish, making amazing earthenware figures of people and different creatures. Africa didn't have a time of the medieval times like Europe. However, the period from the 800s to 1700s was one of relative steadiness. Toward the south, where the Bushmen or San people groups resided, decentralized agrarian ways of life. In Focal Africa, the Bantu speakers would grow all through southern and eastern Africa. A portion of these Bantu speakers, the Swahilis, would lay out exchanging towns on the eastern coast. West Africa, the Sahel specifically, is where Africa's most noticeable realms and domains would grab hold, accumulating their abundance through exchanging courses on the Sahara. Aside from the more seasoned Ghana realm and Kanem-Bornu domain, the Mali realm would turn into the most popular through the abundance gathered by Mansa Musa. After the realm became divided, Sunni Ali would assume command over the area and exchanging courses the 1400s, establishing the Songhai domain, the biggest in Africa. Islam would then turn into its true religion before long. In North Africa, ancestral alliances from Arabia relocated westwards into the grounds of the Berbers. This caused a blend of culture, with the Berbers becoming Arabized. While subjugation had previously been available in Africa with the Trans-Saharan Slave Exchange, Swahili Coast Exchange, and Barbary Coast, it struck one more stuff between the 15th to 19th hundreds of years with the Atlantic Slave Exchange. Altogether, Europeans would take up to 12 million Africans to the Americas as slave work. During the 1800s, the decrease in the slave exchange, alongside the presence of regal naval force watches on the coast, made West Africa adjust to additional authentic business sectors. The Ashanti realm and realm of Dahomey, who had an enormous impact in the slave exchange, would now zero in on wood, gold, palm oil, and cocoa. Abolitionist servitude arrangements were additionally endorsed with various different forerunners in Africa. During the new government period in the last part of the 1800s, after the Berlin Meeting of 1884, Africa was split between European countries, and the scramble for Africa would occur. In the mid to late 1800s, Europeans just controlled 10% of African region, yet by 1914 they would have a stunning 90% under their influence. Just Liberia, and seemingly Ethiopia, were saved colonization. After the Second Great War, a rush of decolonization happened, and local Africans reclaimed their property in mass freedom developments. Ghana was the principal sub-Saharan country to accomplish this in 1957. Portugal's presence in Africa would trace all the way back to the 1500s and lastly reach a conclusion more than 400 years after the fact. In South Africa, be that as it may, freedom wasn't conceded to the local larger part yet to the Dutch minority, who actually controlled under a politically sanctioned racial segregation framework until 1994. To some degree, because of the inconsistent limits Europeans partitioned Africa into, the landmass's cutting-edge history has been hampered by insecurity. As the European military was a consistent and settling force but severe, this equivalent type of government was viewed as the best. Military autocracies would rule Africa during the last 50% of the 20th hundred years. This period would see an unfortunate 13 official deaths in 1994, maybe leftovers of the European bias of the Tutsis. The Rwandan destruction would happen, bringing about an expected 1.1 million passings. Another unfortunate occasion, the subsequent Congo War starting in 1998, was assessed to, in a roundabout way, have straightforwardly killed 350,000 and a stunning 5.4 million. The 21st hundred years, however, would see Africa arise with another predetermination. Attacked by hundreds of years of imperialism, abuse and political debasement, new monetary interest in Africa is giving the landmass new expectation. Speculations are outstandingly by China. Regardless of whether this should be visible as neo-expansionism, however, it's actually viewed as desirable over the savage hard dominion of the past. What presently compromises Africa the most, in any case, is environmental change, and it will require a worldwide work to head in a different direction. One, we must choose the option to take. The account of Africa is one of extraordinary trouble, yet additionally incredible victory. It is quite possibly of the most gorgeous landmass on the planet.
If you're as passionate about uncovering the untold stories as we are, you're in the right place. Why subscribe? By hitting that subscribe button, you're not just becoming a viewer, you're becoming a fellow explorer on this historical journey. Subscribing means you won't miss out on our upcoming episodes.